Hello, Brain Damaged Philosopher here, and in this video I want to discuss faith a little bit. Specifically, I want to discuss faith because I was recently introduced or reminded of an argument that agnostics and theists both often make in regards to religion and science or naturalism. And this is the argument that accepting religion or accepting science, either one requires faith. And so the religious person will say that, if whatever view you have about the world requires faith, then you might as well choose the view that in their minds gives you the most bang for your buck. And they're obviously going to think that's religion. And so you should choose religion. Often they'll also throw in a jab about how atheists are hypocrites because they claim they don't have faith, but clearly you need faith to believe anything, and so and you need faith to believe in science and naturalism especially, and so atheists are essentially hypocrites. Meanwhile, the agnostic will say that since faith is bad because it's a bad way of arriving at conclusions, then and since religion and science/naturalism both require faith to accept, then you should accept neither, even tentatively, and therefore should hold a more sort of wishy-washy, sort of supernatural might be real, supernatural might not be real, like I kind of believe in ghosts kind of position. As contrasted to the sort of atheist position, which is that we have no good evidence for religion, but good evidence for naturalism and science. So the reason that this argument works is because it relies on the fact that hard solipsism and the problem of other minds are problems that cannot be conclusively solved. You see, if we can only probabilistically or with some non-certain amount of certainty solve hard solipsism and the problem of other minds, then anything that we build on top of those concerning the external world or other people must necessarily have a non-100% level of certainty either. And so if you take faith to mean the belief in a proposition that has not been proven absolutely certain, then of course any belief that you have about anything other than your own existence is faith. The reason that I think this is the definition that someone making this argument is using is because religion has absolutely no positively indicative evidence in its favor. The only reason it's not completely impossible is because it's not logically incoherent. And meanwhile, science, on the other hand, has all of the evidence, all of the methodology, all of the institutions and incentives, all of the historical experience and its effectiveness, and all of the sort of self-correcting nature, and all of the philosophy behind it. And so the only thing that they really have in common as something that you can believe in with regards to certainty is the fact that neither one has been proven to be absolutely certain. And so if you're going to describe belief in religion and science with a common word, then that word is going to, and it's specifically in relation to certainty, then that word is going to have to mean, belief in something that's not absolutely certain. So the problem with this, however, is that if we define faith as the belief in something that's not absolutely certain, then that belief is only unjustified if you're assigning 100% confidence to a belief that hasn't been, a belief in something that hasn't been 100% proven. If you apportion your level of belief to the evidence, and you lack belief or decrease your certainty in beliefs that lack any evidence at all, where evidence is a fact, demonstrable fact that's positively indicative of a certain hypothesis based on Bayesian inference, then like those beliefs are justified because they're apportioned to the level of evidence or the lack of it. And so if someone were to say that, faith is simply believing in something that hasn't been absolutely proven, then I would actually agree that then I have faith in science and do not have faith in religion. But that's not inconsistent, because in this case, my faith is based on whether belief in something is warranted by the evidence, right? The only reason this argument works is because when you're referring to a belief in religion and science as both requiring faith, you're obfuscating, throwing a shroud over, cloaking the difference in the level of evidence that is available for one or the other. But the thing is that it's valid to apportion your level of belief to the evidence instead of not believing something until it's been conclusively proven, because just existing and functioning in the world requires holding beliefs that are not absolutely certain, since nothing but my own existence can be proven absolutely certain. And, furthermore, it's possible to justify something while not absolutely proving it. This is not like a logically inconsistent or incoherent or irrational thing. And so it's both necessary and reasonable to apportion my level of belief to the evidence. The reason most atheists wouldn't want to grant that they have warranted belief in science warranted faith in science, and that faith in religion is unwarranted, is first of all because those who make this argument generally don't give you the chance to clarify that by that definition of faith, some faith is warranted and some faith isn't. But also because in redefining the word faith, they don't eliminate the colloquial connotation that the word faith has. You see, even in religious circles that define faith as trust instead of merely the belief in something for which there is no evidence, generally they are having trust on the basis of no evidence anyway. And so faith is a word that is used to describe trust without evidence, or belief without evidence, and as such is useful in that stead because we don't have any other word to describe this actually real and quite common in religious circles phenomenon. And so there's a connotation that faith is a bad thing, because the kind of faith that's colloquially referred to is actually a bad method of epistemology. And so when you redefine faith to mean good epistemology, or to describe something that could be good epistemology and could be bad epistemology, basically, because belief in something that's not 100% certain could be good or bad, depending on the amount of evidence and how you apportion your certainty in your belief. Even though that original connotation no longer applies, it still comes along for the ride because you're using the same letters and the same sounds to refer to something different. So basically, in summary, right, what's happening when someone makes this argument is that they're trying to obfuscate the fact that they've changed the definition of belief while keeping the bad connotation. They've changed the definition of faith while keeping its connotation, its negative connotation, and that this definition is now hiding the real reason the connotation is there, and which is the differing levels of evidence for the two positions. And we can talk about this in terms of trust as well. A quick example is like, I can have trust both in the Nigerian prince that needs my credit card information in order to give me $50 million, and I can also trust my best friend, telling me that he bought a dog, right? Like, I can trust both those things, but one of those things is far less trustworthy and worse epistemology than the other, right? And just like that, if we're redefining faith, I can have faith in, either religion or science, but one is less faith-worthy than the other. And again, this is because even if we can't have absolute certainty, we don't need absolute certainty, We can't get absolute certainty, and in fact, we need to do things in the absence of absolute certainty. Furthermore, I think that the fact that solipsism is logically possible and that p-zombies are logically possible does not mean that they are the most probable option. All of the evidence that we have available to us indicates the world external to us is real. In fact, my argument from consciousness establishes that there must be something external to our minds, whether we have a accurate connection to it or not. And furthermore, practically speaking, we have to wrestle with this world that we are thrown into as if it were real anyway, because that's the best way of explaining and predicting how it acts. Likewise, with other minds, other people act and express themselves exactly or very similarly to how I do when I have internal conscious mental states. And I and they both act and express ourselves very differently from other things. And so it would actually be special pleading to say that there are, two classes of entities. One, me, that acts in a certain way when I have conscious mental states, and another that acts that way but doesn't have conscious mental states, but that, both are different than everything around us. And then furthermore, on a practical level, we are forced to interact with people as if they are conscious anyway, because that's how they behave. And so that's the best way to understand how they act and how that affects us. Right? And so I can say that, like, all of the evidence, all of the philosophical argumentation points towards solipsism and p-zombies not being the correct way to understand anything. And even if they're logically possible, until we can't say with 100% certainty that that's not actually the case. I also want to talk a little bit about the accusation that naturalism requires just as many assumptions and just as much faith as supernatural metaphysics, quickly. Because, again, just like in the case of science versus religion, in the case of naturalism versus supernaturalism, naturalism, we have no confirmed cases of the natural laws being suspended. All of our evidence points to everything following the natural laws. That's why they're natural laws. Likewise, we have no demonstration of, like, everything that we thought could be positively indicative of the supernatural, where we've actually discovered later on what the actual mechanism that caused that thing was, it's always turned out to be natural. So our priors should be extremely high that everything is natural, right? Everything has a natural explanation. And, furthermore, naturalism is more than capable of explaining pretty much all miracles, because the material natural world is big, it's complex. It's like, even if we know the rules by which it operates, we don't know all of the specific states that it's in that can cause the rules to do interesting and strange things. And furthermore, we do know that the psychology and neurology and sociology of human beings makes it very likely that we will perceive strange phenomena from time to time and attempt to explain those phenomena in terms of what we've been primed to expect, and the only systems, religions, that we usually have for explaining the supernatural or the out of the ordinary in the first place. And so again, even if I can't be 100% absolutely certain that naturalism is true, all of the evidence points towards naturalism being true, and that the things that naturalism cannot directly explain yet will most probably be explained naturally, or most probably could be explained naturally. And so you might say that I have faith in naturalism and someone else has faith in supernatural metaphysics, but there is a difference in the quality and reasonableness of those faiths. Furthermore, like, someone could try to say that, like, I don't actually do the scientific experiments myself, So I generally take the word of the scientists writing the papers. But here's the thing about that. Again, I know what the scientific methodology is and can check in cases where I'm doubtful that has been followed. I know what the incentives and institutions in the scientific community are, including peer review and so on. I know that science has a very long history of both being self-correcting and producing results that influence that work in my everyday life. And so again, I have very high levels of evidence and priors that even if I wasn't there myself to do an experiment, that the experiment has been done correctly and that the findings are most probably correct. But I should also point out that in the cases of like where people are talking about science, I place much less certainty in science that I haven't checked out the reasoning and evidence for myself on, which I think is something that's valid to do. So yeah, basically to wrap everything up, this is a false equivalency, right? What's happening with this argument is that the agnostic or theist is taking the common connotation of faith and then redefining faith to encompass both religion and science when there are valid rational differences between them and reasons for accepting science while not accepting religion. And thereby, with this broadened definition, while they keep the connotation, making someone look bad, or attempting to make atheists look bad for accepting science and naturalism and not accepting religion, because their new broad definition can be applied to both, and that broad definition has a negative connotation. What they fail to realize is that that new broad definition, the connotation that they tried to bring with it is no longer applicable, and that like what they've done is just made it so that broad definition now includes things that are actually rationally valid as well as things that are not. So yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Thank you for listening. Bye.